This is Nick Nielsen, Mad Scientist of Muscle, and what I've got for you today here is a full review of the EVOLPOW. I just love that name. It sounds so evil, but it's not evil. It's EVOLPOW P2D Brute Force Power Rack. Now, this is an all-in-one multi-station kind of rack that allows you to do not only every kind of power rack activity and exercise, but also has several stations that kind of expand the horizons of what you can do with this rack. So what I'm going to do is kind of give you an overview of it and then run through some of the different stations. I've been training with this, and I'll show you some of the exercise videos that I've done using this rack as well. So first things first, let's look at it as a straight up power rack. Now, this frame here, solid metal, really good quality tubing. In terms of quality, I do like it in that you're getting a really good value for money. This rack is not an expensive rack, but if you're looking to train and you're not lifting more than 500, 600 pounds, this is going to work just fine for you. So as kind of like a basic home gym rack, this is an excellent option for you. This gives you a lot of easy to adjust options with the rails and with the J-hooks. So the J-hooks themselves, kind of standard, just like that, where this slides in and then rotates down. So these you can set very, very easily like that. And that's one of the features I like about this kind of thing, is you can mix and match where you set these and how you set them very, very quickly. Now, next we got the safety pads. And these are just the slide in, slide out, same kind of concept, where you can see that slides in and rotates down and hooks, and that's going to keep it from moving. Now, one of the things you're going to notice with this, and this is something that probably is kind of a design flaw, but this is right here, the cable attachment. And if this attachment is set high, what you're going to notice is that as you put that in, this cable is going to catch on here. So you will need to manually just kind of move that out of the way if this cable is set high. If it's not set high, if it's down below here, and I'll show you, that'll be out of the way on the back side, but it'll be in the way on the front side. So some racks I've seen with these, they have this cable shifted over to the side. That would probably be something I would recommend to the manufacturer. But that being said, it's really not that big of a deal to do something like that. You're going to want it on this side, so that as you slide this in, if the cable was on that side, you'd be coming down on the cable, but since it's on that side, keep it on the inside, not a big deal. So these are easy to slide in, easy to slide out, and you can maneuver them however you want to. The heights, it looks like about 3 inches of space in between. It gives you not perfect amount of adjustability. I'd love to have the holes a little bit closer in, but it gives you a decent amount of adjustability, so you can kind of, like if you're doing doing a barbell bench press, doing squats, if this is like too high, then you will need to set it a little bit lower so that you're stepping up a little bit more than maybe you want to if the rack holes were a little bit tighter in. But overall, I think it's a good spacing here. Not too bad in terms of, is this going to be functional for you? All right, so when doing squats in this rack, what you want to do here is unload this plate trolley. If you're using larger, like standard bumper size plates, when you have the bar set across here, you're not likely going to contact your knees against these plates, but I was finding if I walked forward a little bit too much, my legs were contacting the plates. So simple solution, take the plates off when you're squatting. It leaves you plenty of room, but it is, again, something to be aware of when you're using the rack. Now, if you're interested in doing band exercises, such as band bench press or banded squats, this rack does come with some band pegs. So what you can do is literally just put these underneath the peg and One of the things that I think could be improved on this is these pegs do slide. Ideally, I'd prefer that they didn't. Not the end of the world, but when you're doing band training, this is going to go over the end of the bar, and the band tension is generally going to keep everything in place, so it's not that big of a deal, not something you really need to worry about. But just having the availability of band pegs like this is a very good feature for the rack. Alright, so the next thing we're going to look at here are the chin-up / pull-up bars. Now, as you can see, you got angle here, you got straight across here, and angle down. So you can do wide grip pull-ups on an angle with your arms out wide to the side, like so. Kind of like a standard pull-up. Now, the various positions in here give you a bunch of other options. So you've got neutral grip pull-ups right here. You've got sort of neutral grip, kind of V inwards. And those are one of my favorites. Actually, I find these to be easier on the shoulders when they're kind of in like this. So I actually like that better than the wider neutral grip, kind of like an overhand positioning. And then you can also do, you got your regular handles for regular chins. You can do overhand. There's a variety of positions. Now, I find the, the bar diameter on here is a bit wider than some chin-up bars I've tried. I kind of like that because it gives more grip and more finger and hand strength work. So it's not so thick that it's going to compromise your grip strength, but it is a bit thicker, so it's going to give you a kind of a meatier feel to it, which I quite like. One of the things on a side note, and I'm going to kind of experiment with this, is taking this and actually flipping it upside down so that these are, they're going to be down here and then across and then up like that, so that when I'm doing pull-ups, my hands are going to be in like that. So I haven't done that yet. I am going to give that a try, and I'll definitely film that and let you know how that works out. So I'm definitely very curious to give it a try. But the standard way of attaching these things on here gives you a very effective and wide variety of chin-up and pull-up positions. All right, so the next thing we're coming to are the pulleys. Now, these are adjustable in height, so you can go all the way from up here to down here and everything in between. This gives you a lot of exercise options as far as like if you're doing back, chest. There are some shoulder stuff you can do with this, but literally anything you can do with, almost anything you can do with a normal cable crossover, you can do with this kind of setup. And that includes any kind of cable work that you do with a single high pulley or a high-low pulley. So to get this going, you will need to kind of account for this safety rail if you still have it in. But if you're adjusting the height here, that's going to obviously contact that. So that is something you're going to need to, basically, if you're doing a lot of adjusting with the pulleys, you're going to want to slide those safety rails out. And it's easy to do, like I showed you. It's literally just sliding in, sliding out, easy peasy. So these have a pop pin with a little bit of pressure on that. Push it out, and then you can slide it all the way up to the top. Snaps back in. Now, in terms of attachments and how the leverage on this works, this goes all the way up, across, and down, and each side moves the same stack. So this side and this side both move the same stack. Now, when you're doing one side, it's going to feel easier. When you're doing both sides, it feels heavier because of, the mechanics of the pulleys. I'm not going to get into all that, but that's just kind of how it works. So when you're doing like a cable row, you're going to have to load that up a lot more than if you're doing like a cable row with both pulleys at the same time. So this kind of row is going to feel heavier than that kind of row. So that's much easier. So in terms of loading, that's something to keep in mind. For back stuff, you likely will need to load a lot more weight onto there than if you're doing chest stuff, especially if you're doing both arms at the same time, or using both cables at the same time. In terms of the action of the cables, it goes nice and smooth. I didn't find any issues with that. This guide right here goes fairly high up, so you can literally, step way back, and I'll stand all the way back in that thing. If you want to do stupidly long cable stuff, you absolutely can. Now, you will notice this bit right here does scrape against the metal. Now, one thing that I want you to be aware of when you are putting this together, if you do get this rack, is, and it's something that happened to me, this bolt right here, this I think was my fault. I didn't tighten it up as much as I probably should have, and when I was preparing to use the rack, this popped right out. Now, I don't think it's a manufacturing defect. I think it is something more on my end where I just really needed to tighten it up a lot more than I actually did. So I left this loose so I could remember to show that to you. Like I said, something to be aware of that you'll want to make sure that you do when you're using this rack, but not a defect or anything like that. Now, when you're using this cable, what you're going to find here is that this metal guard does scrape against these bits right here. So as you can see, that you can hear it. That does scrape against there. I'm not sure what the fix for that would be in terms of the manufacturer. It doesn't really affect things too much. Like once you get this thing past a certain level, you're most likely not going to be, really using, letting it go all the way up like that. But it is something that's going to happen when you're using it. Now, the clip here. This is a bolt, and this clips onto the bolt. Very easy to take on and off. These handles, one thing I like about these cable handles is they're solid. They're not going to fold in half like cheapo piece of garbage handles that I've seen attached to some things where it's just cloth right here, and as you're doing it, the handle kind of folds in and compromises your grip. These are solid, good solid cable handles that aren't going to bend whatsoever while you're doing training. Now, you can clip any sort of carabiner on there, so any sort of attachment that you've got beyond what comes with this machine is going to be effective. It's going to be easy to clip onto here. You could potentially even leave that clip on, just take the handle off and clip whatever you want onto the one that comes with it. Even a bigger carabiner is going to fit on there, so I don't think that's a big deal and nothing you really need to worry about. Alright, so next we're moving on to the landmine attachment. So this is the sleeve that you slide the bar into. It's got a little knob here to lock that bar end in. It's got good movement and good freedom of movement in up and down and side to side. So this is going to basically give you the freedom of movement you need to do just about any sort of landmine training that you want to do. This means also that you don't have to have a separate landmine piece of equipment, and it allows you to get a lot more out of the rack. It gives you tons of exercise options. One thing you're going to find here too, this comes with a T-bar kind of rowing attachment for the end of the bar. I'm going to give you a video on this, but essentially slide this on and then put the plates on. That's going to be a much better way to set this up rather than going in front of the plates and then trying to basically deal with the plates underneath. So overall good piece of equipment here. I found when this was starting to go too heavy that these bars did kind of flex a little bit. They did come back, but if you were going like super heavy, probably like ridiculously heavy, there is a chance that these things could bend a little bit too much. I don't think it's going to happen. Like you'd have to go, actually, like I said, really, really heavy in order to see an issue, but you will notice some flexing of these handles if you start working with heavier weights. Alright, so the next station we're going to look at here is the seated cable row station. So it comes with a foot plate. Now this is not solidly bolted on like that. It slides on and it actually pushes against here. That's not a big deal. I didn't find that to be a problem at all. What kind of I think could stand to be improved is basically the range of motion is limited when you're using this. So if you're using the handles that come with the machine and you set your feet here, if you've got kind of longer arms and shorter legs, you're not going to have an easy time getting full range of motion on this. And and for me, it's not because I'm like butting up against another piece of equipment in my gym here, but you can see right now, this is basically the start position. Normally, if I was doing a seated cable row, I'd like to be starting here with tension. So, you know, there's about 6 inches more range of motion that I'd like to have. versus, you know, doing this, which is a good row, but I'd love to be able to come down here and get a greater stretch at the bottom. Not a deal breaker. There are kind of ways to get around this. You could potentially, what I've done is raise this a little bit higher, so I'm getting, you know, rather than more vertical, more horizontal range of motion, I'm getting a bit more vertical range of motion. So unscrew that, pull it up, slide it up a bit, and you know, going back to the cables, these, they're not like easy peasy up and down. It does take, there's a bit of friction on them, I should say. Again, not a super big deal, but it is something to note. They're not gonna like pop in and then just go whipping up and down. You will need to actually like physically move them up and down against the friction. But like I said, in terms of range of motion, this kind of option can give you a bit more range of motion. So I've added a little bit more weight on there, and you can see basically, even if you're starting from here, it's still going to give you a decent range of motion. You may need to actually like lean back a little bit in order to get the stretch versus leaning forward to get the stretch. So in that respect, it does have some drawbacks. What I'd love to see would be potentially even adding an extension post on here so that you could get a greater range of motion on the stretch. That would be nice. I'm not sure if that's feasible, but extending this foot out or even adding an additional piece, for example, you know, there's a hole right here. If they could potentially add in another little bit, you know, like so, now you're getting that extra range of motion, that full stretch. So in my opinion, that'd be a great addition. Not sure how practical it would be to add on to this kind of machine, but that's just my 2 cents on that. All right, so moving on to the dip handles. These give you a couple of good options, and they fit on just like the J hooks. These attach like that, and you will need to move that out of the way, and then they just settle right down in like so. And boom, now you've got dip handles. So they can fit on this side, they can fit on the other side, however you want to do it. But these inner handles right here are pretty good, basically width for doing chest dips, for doing tricep dips. I mean, personally, I don't find these wide handles to be very good. You could potentially put them down low and use them for push-up handles. So, you know, if you're doing something like this, and you know what? I'm actually going to take my own advice and move these things up. So this kind of leads me back to how easy these things are to move up and down. Pretty good. They're going to give you some friction, but they're pretty easy to move up and down. And they're not really going to be a challenge in terms of, you know, you're going to have to fight to move them up. You will have to work against some friction to move them up, but it's not the end of the world. Once these loosen up a bit, they come up pretty decently. So like I was saying, if you wanted to use these for push-up handles, and the more you use, I was just going to say, the more you use this stuff, the easier it actually is to determine where to set these and to use the actual handles. So, you know, if you're doing push-ups, suddenly you've got this, you can do wider grip, that kind of thing. But like I said, personally, I would actually stick with the closer in grips. Find that's going to be easier on your shoulders. I'm glad they give you 2 options, but that's going to be the better of the option is to have these inner handles. And you can put these here, you can put those here. You can attach bands to yourself using these band pegs. Lots of options for working with. And actually one of my favorite uses for this is for inverted rows, for using these dip handles. These actually with inverted rows, you can use the wider grips and it's going to feel just fine. So you would basically grip on here, then sit your feet out, and then And then you could switch to closer in grips as well. And potentially, if you wanted to set these up here and here, you could do true close-in neutral grip chin-ups as well. It's got the neutral grip handles on there, so not a big deal if you don't want to do that. But if you want to do chin-ups that you're self-spotting with your feet, this will allow you to set these to whatever height you want. For example, let's set those here. And now you can do self-spotted chin-ups. So you grab on here, and then you're using as much leg assistance as you want to help yourself out. That's a fantastic feature in terms of overall strengthening. So this rack also comes with a few cable accessories. So this is basically a short push down / curl bar. It doesn't rotate, it's basically a solid block. These accessories are kind of basic, not a big deal. You can add your own accessories that are, more involved in terms of like rotating handles, more specific pull down grips, stuff like that. This is a decent curl bar. Like I said, it doesn't rotate, but it's usable. This is also a similar kind of concept with a pull down bar. It doesn't have rotating handles. This part doesn't rotate, so it's a basic, generic bar. It's functional, but it's not kind of as useful as more, specialized pieces of equipment that you buy just for that purpose. This is, a rope attachment. This is going to be good for push downs. You can also use it for pulling exercises as well. And then this also comes with an ankle harness, which is a straight up, Velcro thing. This loops around, loops through here, and back onto itself. This allows you to do cable stuff like glute kickbacks. Your ankle is through here. You could attach it through your wrist as well, and then it just clips onto the cable part. So, good, decent / good cable accessories included, but just like with any cable thing, you can clip on whatever additional accessories you want to buy separately. But this gives you at least something to start with. So the final feature I want to talk about here is plate storage. Now, it's a very simple two-post arrangement, just kind of off to the side. This is pretty standard on most home gym racks these days. Essentially, you're going to take your plate and slide it right onto here. And then that just kind of stores out of the way. So these are 45-pound plates. You basically have the capacity to store 2 of these on here, on either side. So if you're using 45-pound plates, bumper plates, you're going to get 2 of them on here. Using lighter plates, skinnier, it's going to allow you to get more plates on there. So if you're looking for more basically options for storage, you're going to want to invest in a couple of plate trees. That's going to be the easiest way to do it, to get more storage space for some of the plates that you're going to use with the rack. Alright, now let's get to the bottom line on this. This is not like a top of the line high quality power rack, but what it is a good middle of the road home gym quality power rack. For the price, I found it to be excellent. An excellent value for what you're getting here, for the amount of exercises you can do with this. It does have some features that I think could be improved upon, but a lot of this stuff is something that, for an average home gym user is going to be plenty. It's going to be absolutely sufficient for anything you want to do. The rails, those safety rails, have about a 600-pound weight capacity. That's going to do for the vast majority of people who train at home. I don't do 600-pound squats anymore. I do 600-pound partial stuff. So for me, this would be more an auxiliary rack. I can talk. But just in general, if you have a kind of a smaller footprint for what you want to do at home, this is going to give you all the options you need for working your back, your chest, your legs. Literally anything you can think to do with a normal power rack, you can do with this rack. And having the capabilities of a rail that slides in and out, and J-hooks that you can actually do isometric stuff against the bottom of the rails, which I can't do on my regular power rack. because my safety rails, while the rack has a much higher capacity, I can't slide them in and out, so I can't move the J-hooks underneath. Whereas on here, I can move the J-hooks underneath, go lighter weight, and do isometric stuff against the bottom of the safety rails. So that's something that I like to do with this style of rack, where the stuff slides in and out. Versus in my heavier duty rack, which is rated up to 2,000 pounds, that's more of like the heavy duty partial stuff. So, you know, for day-to-day training that you're going to do, this rack is going to give you all the options you need for cable stuff, for free weight stuff, for body weight stuff. It's good quality, and the paint and the finish on here, I didn't find a lot of issues with scratching. You know, as you go through over everyday wear and tear and everyday use, things will get scratched up. That's just how it's going to be with any power rack as it gets used. So overall, I like this rack, and it is an excellent value for the money, especially for, you know, the amount of exercise variety you're going to be able to get with this rack. So this definitely gets my thumbs up.